Hello there, right here we have a brand new version for Minecraft. This is version 1.16.2 pre-release 1. This means they're getting close to coming out with the full release of the game. But even though it is a pre-release, they came out with quite a few major features added into the game. Today we're going to be taking a look at all the different changes as well as features added and talk a little bit about how this affects your world. And don't forget to hit the sub button because I make tons of new inventions using crazy tricks in Minecraft. And with these new changes, there's going to be a lot more inventions made. Now, in the past, it wasn't possible to throw snowballs or other projectiles through blocks that normally didn't have any collision. So collision is something that would prevent the player from going through this. But I'm in an older snapshot. If I go ahead and throw a snowball, you can see it collides with this tall flower here. And pretty much a projectile would collide with almost every single type of block. There was some edge cases like fence gates that were open versus being closed, as well as cobwebs. Stuff like arrows could go through here, but stuff like snowballs weren't able to actually go through. So now with the change to projectiles, you can see they go right on through a cobweb as well as a open fence gate. This also means snowballs will be able to go through things like strings without colliding with them. We can actually detect that with observers, which is pretty cool. So instead of having to do the cool trick discovered by Tess, which has to do with a tripwire hook that has an entity over top of it to detect a snowball going nearby it, which is used for ender pearl cannons, we can now actually detect it directly using tripwire. This change affects other projectiles, not only snowballs, but ender pearls, eggs, bottles of enchanting, lingering potions, and splash ones, as well as llama spit. I really look forward to using this because I love using projectiles as an alternative way to get player kills. They also made some more projectiles that are affected by things by bubble column, both the descending as well as ascending ones. Now stuff like arrows used to be affected by them in the past, but they didn't work on stuff like snowballs, eggs, ender pearls, splash potions, lingering potions, fireballs, and shulker bullets. Let's go ahead and give it a try. This one's going to kind of lift up the snowball. Huh, that is so awesome. Snowball's going upwards. It's actually bouncing on it. You could make like a ender pearl stasis chamber with this. That is pretty awesome. Go ahead and try the one that pulls it down. Oh yeah, that has a big effect on it. Just pulls it straight down. Go ahead and try ender pearls. Nice. Use the ender pearl stasis chamber, guys. And let's go ahead and try it pulling it down. Yep. Seems to work really good. That is really exciting. It should be a lot of fun playing around with this during our live stream. So make sure to tune in after watching this video. They added some new accessibility settings, which are right here, to help with visual comfort. There is now a distortion effect slider. You can see it says strength of nausea and nether portal screen distortion effects. At low values, the nausea effect is replaced with a green layover. So let's go ahead and just put it all the way down to off and see what happens. I got another portal right here. Go into survival mode. And yeah, I mean, you can see like the visuals are still there. You can still see the purpleness and it kind of changes colors and it gets more prominent, but the swaying back and forth thing is no longer there. So like you can easily point towards a block, say, hey, I want to break that block. And you could click on it. And that's one thing, like when people like portal trap in other portals, it's very difficult to kind of know where you're walking with this distortion. Let's give ourselves nausea. Okay, yeah, it's slowly creeping in. Rather than the whole screen like swaying and stuff, you can see it just kind of creeps in with the green around the outside. I find that a lot more comfortable than the whole swaying part. Another option is the field of view, FOV, or effect. Controls how much the field of view can change with speed effects. Let's give ourselves some high speed effect. This is normally what it looks like, and let's go ahead and change it all the way down to off, and yeah, it just goes back to pretty much normal view range, so you don't really see anything too far out beyond your right or left. I kind of like that. It makes you feel like you're doing some super fast movement. It is kind of annoying when you're like starting and stopping a lot. The whole screen is like shifting very fast. They added a new feature there's a new feature added in this snapshot, which is chains can be alternated in all directions. So we can go this way, we can go this way, and of course the default, which was up and down. This is pretty awesome. So you can do a lot more unique aesthetics things, like having chains pull the stuff from the sides rather than just up above. This also means we get a brand new unique height for a block, and this is height 0.59375. Because chains have a unique block size from the side, they also have it from when they're laying horizontally. So I'll have to remember to add it to this document where we're keeping track of all the different sizes of blocks in the game. And I'll link it down below for you guys. The next new feature they added is that Endermen will no longer place their blocks that they're holding on top of a bedrock block. This is because Endermen would often get on top of the nether ceiling because somebody had built something up here, and then they would would pick up blocks from other areas and then just start placing them down up here, allowing mobs to start spawning up here, including gas, which would then start blowing up people's stuff. Next feature that they added is piglins will get mad if a player destroys a chest minecart. Now, I'm not sure why they added this, but let's go ahead and break it. And you can see these guys are now mad at me, despite me having a gold helmet. Maybe they're going to eventually add chest minecarts in with some like loot in it or something like that. Maybe they're just trying to keep it consistent. And they also become mad if you look inside the minecart. I guess they're just trying to keep it consistent with the normal chests that they get mad about. Now they made a change to villagers and their professions. They will lose their professions if they move between dimensions. So he had a profession, now over here in the overworld, he no longer has it. But if you go ahead and do one trade with these guys, and then they end up going into another dimension, they will still keep their trades. So long as you do a trade, you'll be fine. But this can be useful in order to make villagers lose their trade without destroying their workstation. If you want to do some kind of cycling where you constantly are able to send them to another dimension and bring them back until they get the right type of trades they're looking for, this would be a new way of doing it. We might actually try to design this during our snapshot testing stream, right after this video goes live. They also made some changes to data packs, and now custom world generation as well as dimension settings now use the same folder pattern in the data pack as other resources, which is the name, then the slash, then the type, and then the slash resources.json. They fixed a pretty cool trick to do with villagers and raids that Grandma Mommy showed me, which is if a villager turns into a witch when he's already part of a village. So this guy here gets a workstation. That's all I need to think that there's a village here. We summon in a lightning bolt, turns into a witch. But technically the village is still here, and now you can actually get bad omen, and it will start a raid, which is kind of strange. And when the raiders would get here, they would not be able to kill the villager or the village because the villager is actually a witch and they don't try to go after witches. So it's kind of like an impenetrable village that could never be destroyed. Now, I never actually use this in any of my raid farms because it's just as easy to box in the villagers so they can't get to them. Now in the past, if you had a zombie villager inside of a minecart and you went ahead and cured it, when it would turn into a villager, what it would do is actually summon in a new mob and then it would get rid of the old one. This means that if it's inside of a minecart, it would pop out of the minecart and would be able to escape. And now they have fixed it. So when this guy cures up, he will stay inside the minecart as a villager. This is very useful for making villager conversion systems. We recently made one for 1.16 during our snapshot testing. And because of this bug, we had to use water streams. It turned out working really good. But now with this change, I'm excited to go ahead and update it using minecarts, which should be a lot easier to control these guys. And if you guys don't know, every Wednesday we have a snapshot testing stream with the viewers. So you guys can hop on the same server as me as we design up cool stuff using the newest changes in the snapshot. And you can find all the information down below. It fixed a problem to do with banners rendering too dark inside of the inventory. The next change that they made is a kind of unusual one. This has to do with the nether roots, and they now change it so that you have to use shears in order to obtain these blocks. They made a similar change to nether sprouts where you have to use shears to obtain these. This changed it up so you can no longer use just a shifting floor to obtain all types of nether vegetation automatically. Now I have designed farms where you can use shears to obtain the nether sprouts and also have shifting floor designs, which allows us to collect the roots in the past. And I have a farm that kind of combines the two where the player not only shears some of them, but also some get shifted. And that design still should work since you're using shears to obtain this, you can also get it to obtain these at the same time. I'm not sure why they made this change. Maybe it was seen as these being so fragile that they shouldn't be obtained unless you have shears. And you guys can find those farms linked below. So if we go ahead and break the root just by using our hand, you see we get nothing anymore. Now if we go ahead and use a shear, we will get an item. Doesn't have to be silk touch, just a shear. Now if we do the same thing with the vines, if you just break the vines, you can see that we still get items. We don't have to use shears. But if you use shears on a vine, you will get 100% chance of getting an item. So it is useful. The next bug that they fix has to do with soul speed not working if there's different blocks sitting on top of the soul sand or soul soil. So when there's blocks like slabs on top of soul soil, or like cakes, or through there's a snow, it wasn't giving the soul speed effect. Now we can compare this behavior with other things that give you unique effects when standing on top of it, such as like slime. Like slime is slow when you walk on top of it. If you go on top of a slab that has slime right underneath of it, you can see it is kind of slow compared to without it. So it's pretty fast over here. And we can do the same comparison with ice. Here's ice. You can see slippery effect even though there's a slab between us. So to keep that consistent, they also made it so slabs will give you the soul speed effect when they're on top of it. Now this is pretty useful because you can kind of spawn proof all your soul speed walkways without having to use like carpet like we did on Proto Sky or buttons or other means. One problem we had in the overworld, our carpets kept getting struck by lightning and burning. There was a strange bug that striders would actually suffocate when the player would look upwards. And if the strider was a double stacked one, the one on top would start sinking down into the one below and they would start suffocating. This should now be fixed. Now in the past, you would be able to ride one strider on top of another one. They both had kind of like a collision similar to like a shulker box. This also allowed players to be able to stand on top of striders if they're able to balance properly. They made a change to the strider mob. Now they will attempt to stay inside of lava, as when they're outside of lava, they are considered like cold. They'll be attracted to going back into the lava pools. In the accessibility tabs, there is something called chat delay, but despite it called chat delay, it couldn't actually be found inside the chat settings, so now it's also been added there. They fixed a bug to do with trainer llamas when they were tied to fences near each other. Using leads, they would attempt to follow each other in their caravan kind of manner. This would cause severe leg issues, so now we shouldn't see this. Now when you use a crafting table to craft something, you unlock a recipe. But this same thing wasn't happening when you would use like a stone cutter to make some blocks, or by using a smithing table to make netherite armor, and they have now added this. Data packs were not able to replace settings of vanilla dimensions during world generation, and now this is possible. They fixed a bug to do with smithing tables and people that made data packs for custom recipes. There was a little bug where if you would double click a stack, and if the output here was similar, it would automatically stack over here, but instead of just taking one out, it would take up two. Piglins as well as hoglins and zoglins were having trouble attacking the player if he was invisible. Even if they knew exactly where the player was, like these piglins do, they actually have trouble hitting me at some point, but now they have fixed that. There was a problem to do with villagers not necessarily choosing the workstation which was closest to them, and were sometimes looking at workstations quite far away and trying to obtain those, even though they couldn't get to them. Now this is fixed, so you guys should probably see more consistent villagers linking with workstations that are closest to them. They also fixed lead inconsistencies, the way the lead was positioned on the trader llamas as well as the player. Another bug to do with data packs was that template pools failed to load via data packs. And pools are the things that the structure blocks look for in order to get different structure for different locations. In the recent snapshots, it wasn't possible to get the subspace bubble, which is advancement for using the nether dimension to travel out quite far. So it's been reintroduced in this snapshot. They also fixed a game crash which was occurring where custom mobs were riding each other, and if you would kill one of them, it would crash the game. Now they also fixed another thing to do with the raids, which is the raids could actually go on without an actual win or loss. This was due to villagers actually dying in the raid, but the raid continuing to go on. And then there's kind of a default time where the raid will just end if nothing happens. And even after this time would go by, the raid wouldn't be considered a victory or a defeat, and now it will be considered a defeat if the villagers are killed. Now in the last snapshot, there was a problem where end cities were getting cut off or parts of them weren't generating in. They did attempt to fix this in the last snapshot, but it was still occurring, so they fixed it again in this snapshot. Hopefully you guys won't miss out on any like ships that just get cut off. They added a new feature being zombified piglins that happen to spawn on top of striders holding a warped fungus on a stick, which is the way to control the striders. They said they added this so that players would know how to kind of control these guys by looking at this. Not every single zombified piglin will spawn in with the stick, meaning that if you want to get those rare variations I talked about in this video, make sure to collect those before updating to 1.16.2, because you won't be able to get the swords anymore. But these guys probably will still come in variations that are left-handed. I'm a bit surprised at how many new things were added in this snapshot, as well as quite a few major bugs were removed. If you guys ever run across any weird bugs during your playing of these new snapshots, make sure to go ahead and report them. There's always a link right here in the menu, as well as tell me about them down in the comments. And don't forget to share this video with your favorite Minecrafters. Like and start using these new changes. I would like to thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the live stream. Bye bye!